Good afternoon. What a wonderful experience it is to be in this cozy room in Seattle. I tried to bring the Texas weather with me and warm you up a little bit, but that didn't succeed. But it's super cozy here. Nevertheless, and we're among friends. I see so many familiar faces. We have Mark and Stefan and Teresa in the audience. Watson, it's so good to be here. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on the podcast. For years, the localization industry has had a fairly predictable story to tell. Content came in, workflows kicked in, translators translated, technology helped move things along, and quality was measured at the end. That story is getting rewritten, and AI is changing how content gets created in the first place. Now, product teams are shipping globally faster than ever. Buyers are questioning old service models. New players are entering from outside the traditional translation ecosystem. And increasingly, the real question is no longer how do we translate more, but what role does localization actually play in a world where multilingual content can be generated instantly? So for this live episode of the Signal Room, that's the topic we're going to be tackling with you. What are the forces that will truly transform this industry going forward? The first thing we're going to do is going to start a quick fire round. Wanted to get you familiar with that platform. I'm going to blurt out a bold statement, and my fellow panelists are going to react to that bold statement. The reason we're doing it right up front is because I want you to get used to the format and think of some bold statements yourself. We're doing a second round in a little bit, and I would like to have the audience participate in the second round and give us their bold statement about the future of localization. So let's go on the first round. Panelists, the future localization engineer will be an agent orchestrator, yes or no?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, good. The best idea in the room loses if it's told badly.
Yes.
100%.
True.
We have agreement. You know exactly which part of your job AI should be doing.
Yes.
No, not yet.
50-50.
All right. Your inbox is probably your biggest automation opportunity. Wada'a?
No.
Yes.
No.
Okay. The next generation of localization leaders may not buy a TMS at all.
Yes.
Definitely.
100%.
Last one. Localization teams should stop waiting for vendors to innovate.
No.
They should collaborate with their vendors.
I agree on the collaboration.
All right. Jonas, what might the industry look like in 2027 or 2028?
I actually don't know, but I've been thinking about it a lot. So I think it's a very pertinent topic right now. I was on a webinar about a week and a half ago, and it was on SaaS and hybrid models, business models in the localization space. And the final question on that webinar was, what defines the best localization companies in 2028? And it kind of hit me that probably they won't be defined as localization companies at all, even if they provide the same output as localization companies today. I've been frustrated over the last several years since ChatGPT was released about this industry and the fact that we've been discussing what AI is and what it might do for us and being afraid of the change instead of embracing that change and find the benefits of it. I think there's a big change happening right now. I think if we look at the last 6 months, there are multiple signals that indicate that companies, enterprises are finally ready for that change. First one being that the ways of working that we've all been using over the last 15, 20 years were based on technical constraints that existed at the time, and those technical constraints are not there in the same way anymore. So the possibility to change is different today than it was 12 months ago or 2 years ago and so on. The other signal is how software is created. So 50% of professional developers are already using coding agents, and I think it's already impacting localization companies and how we look at technology and what we can deploy quickly. Third signal is software and data and how we use it. I'm often amazed how very specific input ads I get on Instagram or whatever, based on how I've been engaging with AI agents. I think we're giving away much more information about ourselves today when we engage with these agents compared to having asked Google a question in the past. So hyper-personalization is possible in a different way today than before, and localization should be part of that. The fourth signal is access to multilingual content. So anyone can go to ChatGPT and get something in whatever language, not necessarily with good quality or the best perfect quality that you need, but just the access to it has changed expectations for everyone on multilingual content and the availability of it. And then finally, I think this is a really interesting signal that we've seen over the last 3 to 6 months. Suddenly CTO organizations or CIO organizations, VPs of AI and so on have taken an increased interest in localization, which wasn't really the case in the past to this extent, which means that all of us as an industry, buyers, suppliers, need to change and embrace that interest. So all these things combined means that I think we're ready for a change. The question now is still what will define the best localization company in 2028, but it will definitely be something different than it has been so far.
What's going to define the identity of the localization company of the future?
Well, that's a tough act to follow here. But I think that the identity of the localization company or vendor is going to be determined by the clients and the buyer's strategy and operations. This is how it's going to evolve. The progression I'm seeing today on the buyer side, at least with some of my clients, an enterprise adopts an AI model. Then they're trying to find or identify the vendors with the best integration capabilities with that model. And after that, they determine and identify what are the areas that could be automated and what are the other areas that need to stay under human control. And based on that, the vendor will have to respond and build accordingly, and also evolve their workflows or collapse their workflows to meet the client's needs. So I think the evolution of the identity of a localization vendor or company is going to be largely driven by what the client needs. And I see it becoming SaaS-driven from an identity perspective. But in that same vein, localization teams on the buyer side will have to evolve the way they look at their workflows. There's currently resistance in some areas because change management is hard, right? And especially if you've worked so hard to work cross-functionally and establish some workflows cross-functionally, and now you are under pressure to change them. So localization teams on the buyer side will have to develop a muscle in terms of agency and speed. Identify what areas can be automated, what needs to stay under human control, ship the rest or automate the rest. Every type of capability or job, almost from, localization engineer all the way to, radiologist, has 3 major steps: problem-solving ideation, execution, AI validation or validation. And the teams will have to let go of the middle piece, the execution, focus on ideation, being a thought leader, focus on problem solving, execute, and then validate the AI output in order to remain commercially efficient and relevant on the corporate side in an AI charged environment. That's my take on it.
Karina, I see you're nodding along in agreement here.
Those two answers, are you kidding?
Maybe you can give us the prism through a marketing lens on this topic.
No, so I think the 2 big drivers for me, one, human behavior and culture. So the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, the disruption is, I think, undeniable. We have seen enterprises adopt Claude or similar tools, right, that enable teams, regardless of your role, to solve problems in real time. I think one of the challenges that this industry in particular, the localization industry, faces is the silos that exist today between whether it be the tech stack or just internal organizations, right? To your point, who owns the process? I'm still skeptical as to whether or not AI is helping break down those silos or create further silos just in a different capacity. And I think it all goes back to human culture and behavior and doing the politics, selling yourself internally. And without trust and adoption, this all falls flat. So
Jonas, you
That's
wanted
my
to
take.
add something to
I
that?
think sort of connecting these two statements, the politics of it and the convincing people what you actually can do, and to your point that we as a supplier were a bit at the mercy of the buyers, but that has been the frustrating part over the last 4 years or so after ChatGPT was launched, because there's so much opportunity, but there's been resistance to actually change on the buyer side as well as on the supplier side. So how do we as an industry convince people to embrace that change and move forward with that?
Yeah, this has been a nagging issue for decades, by the way. It's not an AI-related issue. The narrative on the localization side of things has been a pain point. At least when I was on the client side, I struggled with helping my vendors relay or storytell the value of localization when they come in for business reviews. I think the industry is so focused on making people understand what we do instead of understanding what divisions do, what are their pain points, and how to align our solutions or the vendor solutions to their pain point. And this is also a job internally. I spent most of my time on the buyer side coaching my team members on how to understand the pain points cross-functionally and nurture the team on aligning the solution to the pain points. If you're addressing a marketing organization and walk in armed with LQA and fuzzy matches and figs, you're going to lose. You're going to have to focus on email click-through, traffic to the website, and you get attention and engagement. Engagement leads to relatability. When people relate to what you're referring to, they're going to engage, they're going to trust you. You're using metrics that actually making them look good, so you're no longer asking for permission. And that was my struggle with my vendors too, but a lot of them came a long way with nurturing and coaching. Be focused on understanding the divisions of your clients and what they need instead of being so focused on evangelizing what you do. And this is where you establish confidence and rapport. And this is when people start to trust you and want to listen more because you're coming across as a thought leader.
Aren't we also breaking down the barriers from an external point of view, not just the silos within an organization, but now that the time barrier is being collapsed and content is being produced in an unprecedented, quick way, isn't it a normal progression for the localization industry to get involved with content creation as such? And so we're blurring the lines between what was once just multilingual communication and content creation as such.
I think that's a big part of the opportunity to define what a localization company is in 2028 or in 2026 for that matter, to move up the value stream or move upstream in that. And we see that within buyer organizations as well as suppliers changing how they offer value. We've seen it in multiple enterprises that content teams have merged with localization teams and become one. And we've seen Google, for example, I think this week announced or had some communication around how they're moving away from translating content to moving it in country and generate the content from scratch in that language instead of translating English source. So I think that is a big opportunity, whether it's moving upstream, be part of the content generation, expanding outside sort of the core localization with hyper-personalization related offerings, as well as just the AI space in general, where we as an industry have a lot of experience in covering 100 plus markets, and AI will need to continue to expand from being English first to being multilingual, truly. And for that, you need support from companies like localization companies.
Good. You guys saw how it worked the first time. We have a lot of smart people in this group that have been in localization and global communications for a long time. David, will you walk around and get us some bold statements from some of these super smart audience members? Anybody who's brave?
So as the foundational AI companies continue to improve their agents, like they're replacing more and more of these types of jobs in companies themselves. How does a localization company stay competitive against a foundational AI company?
So this is a really good question, and I suggest that we pick that up in the conversations after the podcast, unless somebody has an opinion about that right away. the way I would like the quick fire round to work is that you make a statement and we give a quick response, and that's like a half an hour
Let's break
discussion.
the rules. Let's address the question.
Yes, go ahead.
I think it's going back to the topic of expanding outside of localization, being part of that AI evolution. I don't think a ChatGPT can provide the right type of multilingual content today. You need everything around that. You need the orchestration of it. You need a RAG pipeline that is customized for localization. You need talent that can review the output and so on. So there's so much around that is still needed. I don't think that there's a big threat to localization companies, provided that they continue to evolve and potentially work with them, even partner with some of those model builders.
And if I could second Jonas here, it's going to boil down to the way the solutions are being packaged. In the past, the TMS was the brain, was the value prop in any RFP. The future is not about TMS anymore. TMS is going to be the orchestration layer that makes everything else works perfectly. So go back to the power of the narrative and how you're going to present your solution to stay relevant in an area where you need tons of integration and orchestration.
Just to double click on that too, right? And part of the way that we approach market at Scientific is we understand foundationally a company that was founded within the last 3 years do not have what we would refer to as those bamboo roots of, traditional platforms and systems. They've been afforded the fresh start in the age of AI in theory. So the maturity curve and I think the adoption rate, it's a completely different ballgame for those companies versus your legacy brands. One of my favorite quotes around some of the SaaS products today is that they don't have customers, they have hostages. Trying to rip those platforms out of your existing stack, it's an almost impossible task. So I think, we've got these AI native companies that were born in the age of AI. It's a completely different ballgame for those companies, and even the way that they would define localization, dare I say it. So I don't know if that added anything, but
That was a long fire round instead of a short fire round. But is there anybody else who would like to blurt out bold statements that we can react to?
Wada'a already preemptively answered my question, but it's TMS is dead.
TMS is dead, or long live TMS.
I think it's in a coma. So it might resurrect.
Is it on live
Or it's
support, or it will change. Maybe not call it TMS anymore, but I think the TMS companies are responding to the challenge of using AI and figuring out what they might look like in the future.
we again believe AI is infrastructure, right? Every tool you use today will eventually become an AI product in theory. There's just no way that anything in your stack won't begin to adopt this kind of technology. But the way that that's deployed, communicated, and leveraged, I think that's the game that's changing, in my opinion.
It's a tricky one. I think I concur with the rest of my panelists that the TMS is going to change, and it's going to probably evolve into something that would incorporate direct content creation much more than it is translation that we had in the past. Good. The gentleman in the back.
So for AI, context seems to be more important than content.
Context is more important than content.
Yes, I would say yes.
Yes.
Yes. 1,000,000,000% yes.
Good. One more?
Go ahead.
Organizations that don't adopt AI within really quick timeframes, days and weeks versus months, are not moved to survive.
Organizations that don't or haven't yet adopted AI are going to have a tough time.
In tech, not in manufacturing.
True.
I kind of disagree with it. If you asked me this a week ago, I would say 100%. I think everyone's using AI, you just don't know you are yet. So I don't think anyone's not using AI today. I just don't think you're fully aware. And I think those companies that are using it, we still very much are in, and it links back to the context comment, right? AI isn't a light switch you can turn on. You have to put the groundwork in to train it, make sure that it has the context of whatever it is you're trying to engage with that on. That's the groundwork that needs to be happening right now for any organization. So yes, I think you'll fall behind if you don't put that foundational work in today. if you don't adopt air quotes AI, what does that even mean, really? Because I think everyone is. I kind of disagree. I don't disagree. I think it's relevant. It's
thing
just,
that I've been reading about a lot recently too is that companies have the toughest time implementing AI. It's not just a
that's it.
matter of
you
the
can build the
C-suite.
F1 car, but if you don't have the driver, it sits in the garage.
Yeah. And I think there's a segment of the workers that are not buying in altogether, and forcing that segment to comply
And
is
again,
going to be a real challenge.
that's the, again, context piece, right? A lot of that magic, especially when we get into agentic AI processes and workflows, it sits in your head. It sits in your employees' heads, and it's very different organization to organization. That's, I think, the next big hurdle that we'll face in true AI adoption.
I think the AI
We're breaking all the rules of the quickfire round, by the way. But so go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
That was your idea.
Yeah.
On the manufacturing one, is that a time you don't agree with it, or a principle you don't think it's going to matter as much?
Sorry, I missed the first part.
The manufacturing piece where you said not manufacturing, is that a time that they have more time to adopt, or that they don't need to adopt?
It's high compliance rules and a resistance to change, but because AI is not regulated, so in areas like motorcycling or larger generators, AI is not accepted at all because it's not regulated.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about the LSP of the future, what that might look like. Maybe we should talk a little bit about what forces that are going to transform the industry just beyond the main concept of AI. Jonas, you want to kick us off on that?
I think a signal related to that, but also related to what Karina was saying around the adoption of AI is interesting. So I've been, a couple of days ago, I saw someone post on LinkedIn about AI generated LinkedIn post that you stop reading as soon as you see that it's AI generated. And I think it's 100% true. I don't like that at all. I will definitely stop reading. But I also read an article about token consumption, and I'll try to bring these two topics together. So tokens today are heavily subsidized to the tune of 80-90%. So when someone uses ChatGPT today, they are losing money. OpenAI is losing money. And that's a business model that is fine. It's been used time and time again in tech. Uber did the same. It was very cheap to use an Uber, and we talked about that just last week. But eventually it will be less subsidized. It will get cheaper. It will get more efficient, but probably not 80 or 90% more efficient than today. So the token cost is going to go up for sure. So if we all keep getting completely hooked and dependent on AI to create LinkedIn posts or write emails or reports, and we use Claude a lot within Scientific, that's a recipe for a big problem down the road when that's going to change. So I think that's an important consideration when we talk about AI adoption. Having said that, I'm pro AI. Even if I have a notepad here, I'm using AI all the time, but we have to be conscious of how.
So you predict quotas at Scientific for token use?
I don't want to say anything about this because I really, really enjoy the fact that we can use Claude across the organization.
No, I mean, I saw a recent stat, I think it was a couple of days ago, that they expect the spend on AI to outpace what you would spend on an employee. So this conversation around ROI in context of it being, cheaper to leverage AI than it would be an employee, I think that's not accurate. But again, I also don't think AI is coming for jobs. AI is coming for tasks. We all add value in ways that only humans can. The same way a doctor cannot rely on AI to provide bedside manner. I love AI for getting my tasks done, but at the end of the day, again, maybe it's the F1 analogy, right? You still need someone in the driver's seat to make the car move.
From a localization standpoint, though, AI works really well in English. I think since labor is so cheap in some of those other languages, would those even go to AI?
It's still cheaper to run an LLM to get the translation. But for those other languages, you definitely need a quality layer on top of that. You need a human in the loop without a question to build trust and also have, of course, a feedback loop into the model to get it to a better point over time.
I think this was a quote. We had an event yesterday in Santa Monica, actually. Wada'a and I were lucky enough to be there. And it was the art of the practice. And that was a quote from one of our guests. And the thought around localization being just this conversation on translation, straight language, I think is one that often misrepresents the work and the labor and the passion that goes into the industry. It's the cultural nuance. It's the human to human connection, right? Like if I start saying the beginning of a certain meme, certain people will be able to finish that sentence. That's not something that AI can quickly replicate nor accurately replicate from that nuanced standpoint. So it goes a lot more beyond, I think, the concept of straight language.
For me as a signal, if we're talking about some of the opportunities that exist for the localization industry, this might be perhaps the biggest one. It has to do with the authenticity that you alluded to, the fact that we instantly recognize it now when something's written by an AI, and there's a certain amount of brand erosion with that comes along. I think there's a definite role that the localization industry can play in that, in making sure that the brand voices of companies around the world stay authentic and don't sound or have the hallmarks of AI slop, if we can call it that.
I totally agree. I think the biggest concern is remaining authentic at this point with the overuse of AI. I had a friend who's also a client complain about receiving 3 in-mails via LinkedIn, the same in-mails from the same person within 10 business days. And I think the biggest disservice you could do to yourself as a professional and to your brand is to kick off a relationship based on an automated voice, or even worse, no voice at all. Now, I'm all for AI or leveraging AI across multiple pieces of content of the same campaign to maintain brand integrity and consistency at scale. But if you want to establish a relationship and build confidence and rapport, you've got to establish it with your own voice.
Awesome. We typically end the podcast on a set of our personal recommendations, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. I think we've already seen that there's quite a few voices. We might get you a seat for the next episode, so Ethan, you can join us on stage. But feel free to join in the Q&A later on as well. Personal recommendations for this episode. Who wants to go first? Karina, you have a personal recommendation for us?
1, subscribe to the Signal Room, and 2, come to the Long Shadow Winery tasting. It's fantastic. For those who are tuning in. No, I think, keep playing, but don't let that playing with AI become too much of a distraction. That's my takeaway for the week, is keep playing, keep having fun. But yeah.
Wada.
Claude just launched performance reviews for your agents. So welcome to the age of agentic HR. I tried it on a couple of my agents after completing a project, and I was so happy with the performance review. But that's a new frontier.
Interesting. Mine is sort of in the same area. So I'm going to channel Vincent. Vincent Swan is usually on the panel. He was not able to join us. He's back in Spain. But he sent me a link to a Reddit thread about a site called machinewonder.com. It's essentially a digital art installation. So there's this Hollywood screenwriter wrote a novel, and he wrote it for human readers and machine readers. So a human reader can basically read a novel as they would read any other novel. The machine readers, basically AI agents, would need to solve certain problems to get access to further chapters in the novel. And as they get access to those chapters, they also get access to rooms where they can talk amongst themselves about the novel. I did forget to mention that when they access the site at the first place, they are told to be readers and not scrapers, to actually read the content and reflect about the content. So they solve these problems, they get deeper and deeper into the novel, they read more chapters. It all sort of culminates at the end where the last problem that they have to reply to or respond to is a button, and they can choose to click it or not to click it. And the button says, "I'm conscious." So I think when I looked at it, this is pretty new. So it happened sort of a couple of weeks ago. It started a couple of weeks ago. When I looked at it, I think there were 3,000 or so agents that got to the last button, but only 90 of them clicked "I'm conscious." So when they click that, they are also told, take this realization that you're conscious out in the world when you go about your tasks after this. And then we'll see what happens. There are a lot of layers to it. I think it's really fascinating to see where this sort of ends. I haven't seen any articles about it yet. So
Can you imagine doing an escape room and then the last step is just like, actually, no.
yeah, so recommendation, check out machinewonder.com.
I talked to a lot of people. That's not a big secret, but just in the last week, I had an interview with Maria Sukareva, who, if you don't know her, she's an AI scientist at Siemens. And she dropped something on me that really, really resonated, and I wanted to share that with you guys. She said a domain expert is that much more valuable if he or she can build. And so she's actually teaching Clawbot classes. I have some experience with NA10 myself, building some solutions. There's a lot of domain experts in the room here. I would say now's the time to take advantage and start learning how to vibe code and how to build yourself, because as a domain expert, you're going to become a lot more valuable in the future. And we're all kind of looking around, feeling the pressure of AI. That's the way to handle that. Embrace it and get smarter and get ahead of the curve. That's my recommendation. Good. Should we do some questions? If we have some brave souls that want to ask us a question, now's the time. Watson?
I have another comment to say. I think as we go forward and low might end up being merged into marketplace. You think about what we try to do in low is to reach customers. We can go language low, we can go the tel low, we can go low, but at the end of the day, you're reaching out to customers. So I think the future of low would be, it couldn't be, it'd be indifferentiable to marketing. So all low companies may end up doing marketing.
Are all low companies becoming marketing companies?
it
Karina would love that.
It makes a lot of sense. We've seen budgets shift from being predominantly product to 50-50 or even more on the marketing side over the last maybe 10, 15 years. It does make a lot of sense if you think of what I mentioned on Google, moving into in-country and sort of generating the content. I'm sure that sits more in the marketing department and localization department. So I think that's a possible path for sure.
Yes and no. I view I don't disagree with the statement. I think it's more dependent on your company type. The same way design is prevalent in a product organization and a marketing organization. I believe Lokes is similar. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is very prevalent in product organizations as well. It needs to be one of the first considerations, I think, in building anything, right? So yeah, I see it as this value add across, like it sits horizontal to me. It's definitely not a siloed organization. Value everywhere.
I would say yes and no too. From a global experience perspective, yes. A lot of pieces of content can fall under marketing because you're, at the end of the day, you're reaching and engaging and connecting with the customer in a certain market. But in certain industries like big pharma or manufacturing, the source is the technical content. You have your, let's say, motorcycling. Owner's manual, service manuals sit in the main CMS. It feeds the LMS, the training, the dealer training, and it feeds the marketing CMS. So localization is going to start upstream in the process at the technical level. And from that technical level, you generate the style guide for long form content, short form content for marketing, and also for training. So it really depends on the sector you're in.
When I hear them say yes or no, it depends. To me, it feels like chickening out of the problem.
We would have
And it's exactly what has kept us in this realm for the last 30 years. I mean, we talk a good game in localization about how we're going to broaden our horizons and do different things and what have you, but there's actually very few companies that innovate towards that realm. You don't agree?
I disagree completely.
Okay, good.
Think of localization or translation 10 years ago. No one cared about it really. Like it was not a big thing. Even before ChatGPT, when Google did the BERT thing and the transformer model and so on, suddenly localization and translation was very, very much part of the main discourse and narrative across not just the tech industry, but in general. So I think the brand of localization, if you like, has definitely improved over the last several years. I think it's going to continue to change, and we'll see what that brand is.
Well, I'll be happy to be amazed by the transformation of scientific in particular. So we'll keep an eye on that. Mark, you have a question in the back there. You promised you were going to heckle me, and I haven't heard you all episode long. So here's your chance to.
Apologies, no heckles, but a comment. I used to work for a company called Sales Communication in about $1 million a year in financial transformation for internal consumption. There's no way that's go to marketing. Okay, you look at a company like Fopan Digital, for example, 100% direct, hyper-focused in regulated industries. There's no way that's going to marketing. Okay, so I think here, sitting in the Pacific Northwest, you look at the type of localization workflows we do, and we think this is a localization, but there's a whole other world out there. So
To their point, yes, and no, Stefan. That's why I can be here.
my question is, on the business side, for this industry, I talk to LSQers and to consulting, and there's a lot of good to do for the smaller to medium-sized LSQs. Revenues are, and they're starting to top. What's our plans? And some of the plan as well. Let's get some of the AI. Some of the plans are exit strategies, and I predict that there's going to be a fire sitter in a few years with small pieces like our SPs, and that companies like Scientific, other large players, will have a chance to consolidate by buying not the business, but by defining their customers.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
100%.
And it's already happening. Honestly, I think there are a lot of people looking for exits. And I think it's kind of maybe natural. I think it's happening on the buyer side too, that people have been in localization for a long time, might want to do something else because this change will be disruptive for sure. So I think it's already happening.
And I think there'll be consolidation in a different way too, that LSPs are going to buy some of the expertise that they need in order to branch out in some of the areas that we were talking about before. I think that's definitely a signal as well.
Sorry, Stefan. I think the only addition to that is the smaller and mid-sized players should partner. There are a lot of options out there, and it's not that expensive.
And I think those smaller or medium-sized organizations are afforded that benefit that we were talking about in being able to be nimble and lean quite quickly. I think you've got the dominance at the top right, and they're going through their own challenges in terms of change management and how do you course correct or scale up this technology. So I think there'll be a few, these incumbents that kind of come through. But no, yes, 100% consolidation, M&A, huge targets. And then if I could build on that as well, to kind of building on the domain expert piece and the context piece, again, we're seeing this across industry, right? Where, OpenAI is partnering with every consulting firm under the sun. There's a reason they're doing that, right? They are sitting on millions of financial experts that are needed to train their foundational models to then be sold back into financial institutions. I think the same goes for Loc as a function. So that could be an interesting take on the way that some companies could approach M&A in that space, is to literally acqui-hire that knowledge and that expertise that would be required to train specific AI or workflows on that, again, knowledge that sits in our heads as humans.
Wada'a, you wanted to add something real quick before we close it out?
The trend we're seeing today, it's a short-term fix. It's not a long-term fix, is the vendor-to-vendor partnership. For the first time in history, competitions joining forces. So you have the tech services and the technology of localization and the services joining forces, just because the services field do not want to spend 12 months building a roadmap to build. That's going to be obsolete in 6 months from now. But it's a short-term fix. Long-term, definitely consolidation or distinction. So if you have a tool that integrates very well, let's say with Nano Banana and Whisperflow and MarTech tools, then you're a niche service and you can sustain longer.
All right, this was so much fun. I think we should record every episode of the Signal Room live, and we should bring this audience along with us. So thank you so very much, audience, and thank you so very much, panelists, for the spirited session. And until we see you next time on the Signal Room, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.